You know, we rely on science to make sense of the world. It's our best tool for finding the truth. But what happens when that tool is deliberately broken? Today, we're diving into a hidden strategy, one designed not to find facts, but to manufacture ignorance.
All right, so let me ask you this. What could dying bees, cigarettes, and climate change possibly have in common? They seem totally unrelated, right?
Well, the answer is, it's surprisingly simple and honestly a little bit chilling. All three have been the target of the exact same playbook, a deliberate strategy to weaponize doubt and sow confusion.
To really get how this works, let's start with a modern-day scientific mystery that lays it all out perfectly: the strange case of the dying bees.
Normally the scientific process is pretty straightforward, right? First, a problem shows up. In the 1990s, bee colonies started collapsing at an alarming rate. Next, you identify a prime suspect. In this case, a whole new class of pesticides hit the market around the same time. And finally, science gets to work to figure out if there's a connection.
But here is where the story takes a weird turn. For over 20 years, scientists couldn't land on a clear answer. The whole process just stalled out. You have to ask yourself, why? Why did it take so long?
And this chart, well, this shows you exactly why. The second pesticides were identified as the main suspect. Funding for research into other causes just exploded. We're talking 4 to 5 times more studies looking at everything else: viruses, climate, beekeeping habits, you name it. It created this thick fog of data that made it nearly impossible to see the real culprit standing right there.
So where did this whole strategy of creating chaos and confusion even come from? Well, to figure that out, we've got to rewind the clock a bit and look at the original playbook.
We're going all the way back, past the bee problem in the 90s to 1953. This was a huge moment. It's the year that researchers proved, without a doubt, that painting tar from cigarettes onto mice caused cancerous tumors. It wasn't a theory anymore. It was a fact.
So, faced with this undeniable proof, what do you think the heads of the big tobacco companies did? They held a secret meeting at the fancy Plaza Hotel in New York. And they weren't there to figure out how to make their products safer. No, they were there to plan a counterattack on science itself.
And you don't have to take my word for it. This quote from a leaked internal memo lays their entire strategy bare. Get this, doubt is our product. It's right there in black and white. They realized they didn't need to disprove the facts. They just needed to create the illusion of a controversy. And here's exactly how they did it. They poured money into hundreds of distracting research projects. Some sounded kind of legit, looking at lung cancer in non-smokers, but others were just completely bizarre. I mean, were they really looking into a link between cancer and baldness, or the month you were born? The goal was never to find an answer. The goal was to bury the real answer under a mountain of noise.
And the scary part? This playbook worked so well that it's been copied ever since. It's actually become such a recognized phenomenon that it has inspired a whole new field of academic study.
It's called Agnotology, and it's basically the study of how ignorance gets made on purpose. We're not talking about things we just don't know yet. We're talking about the deliberate, strategic manufacturing of doubt. And believe me, this wasn't a one-and-done thing. The same exact playbook was rolled out again to defend a chemical called bisphenol A. BPA, that stuff you find in a lot of everyday plastics.
And when you look at the research, the results are, well, they're just staggering. Check this out. 93% of studies paid for with public money found that BPA was harmful, okay? But the studies funded by the chemical industry, 0%. Not a single one. I mean, how is that even statistically possible?
Well, here's the trick. It was so clever and so subtle. The industry-funded studies all used a very specific strain of lab rat, a rat that just so happened to be biologically insensitive to the effects of BPA. They literally picked the test subject that would give them the answer they wanted from the start. It was a genuine magic trick performed in a science lab.
Okay, so fast forward to today. This whole fight has gone digital. It's moved from secret memos and labs to the internet, where you can manufacture doubt faster and spread it to millions of people in the blink of an eye.
Just take the climate debate. Researchers looked at 20 million tweets about climate change in just a 3-month period. 20 million, just to get a handle on what this new digital battlefield looks like.
And what they found is fascinating. It turns out a pretty small group of skeptic accounts are responsible for a massive amount of the content. They're just hyperactive, tweeting constantly, which creates this total illusion that there's a huge ongoing 50-50 debate among scientists when there really isn't.
And for a lot of these folks, it's not even about the money. It's about ideology. Historians have actually traced the roots of this back to some physicists during the Cold War who were genuinely terrified that any kind of environmental regulation was a slippery slope that threatened free markets and personal liberty.
Okay, so I know this can all sound pretty bleak, but here's the good news. Just understanding that this playbook exists is the single biggest step toward defending yourself against it. So the real question for all of us is, now that we know the tricks, how do we fight back?
So, how can you spot this playbook in the wild? Here are 4 key things to keep in your back pocket. First, identify the controversy. If you see a massive debate suddenly flare up about something scientists have pretty much agreed on for years, get suspicious. Second, question the funders. Always ask, who paid for this research? What's in it for them? Third, look for the distractions. If you're suddenly seeing a ton of other theories pop up that just seem designed to confuse things, that's a huge red flag. And finally, number 4, recognize the vocal minority. Don't mistake a small, loud group for a massive movement. By understanding these tactics, we can all become better defenders of the truth. And in a world where we're flooded with information, there's honestly nothing more important than that.